February 2023. A digital countdown flickered on millions of screens as the Nintendo Direct reached its climax. For 40 minutes, fans had been fed a steady diet of nostalgia and whimsical charm, but the final reveal came with a sting that no amount of colourful pixels could soothe. On the pre-order page for The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom, a single number appeared that fractured the community: $69.99. For decades, Nintendo had positioned itself as the accessible, family-friendly alternative to the hyper-expensive, high-octane world of PC and next-gen gaming. What began in 1889 as a humble Hanafuda card company in Kyoto had metastasized into a $50 billion global titan, a corporation that essentially saved the industry from its own collapse in 1983. But beneath the primary colors and the orchestral swells of Link's latest adventure lies a cold, predatory calculation. Nintendo wasn't just raising the price of a game, they were testing the structural integrity of their fans' loyalty, demanding a premium price for software running on hardware that was obsolete before it even hit the shelves. As the cost of living skyrocketed and competitors offered cheaper, more powerful alternatives, the Nintendo tax finally reached its breaking point. This is the story of how the world's most beloved toymaker turned into a ruthless financial engineer. This is the cynical truth behind the $70 game. The Nintendo tax is not a myth. It is a meticulously maintained economic ecosystem designed to prevent the devaluation of digital goods. While Sony, Microsoft, and Steam titles typically see massive discounts within 6 months of release, collapsing from $70 to $20 in a desperate bid to clear digital inventory, Nintendo games remain frozen in time. A copy of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, a decade-old port of a Wii U game, still commands a $60 price tag on the eShop today. This artificial price floor is intended to signal prestige, convincing the consumer that a Nintendo product is a permanent store of value.
However, when that floor was raised to $70, the illusion of value began to curdle into the reality of exploitation. Gamers weren't just paying for a game, they were being asked to subsidize Nintendo's refusal to iterate on their aging hardware. The most visceral rejection of the $70 price point stems from the silicon gap. When Sony and Microsoft pushed their titles to $70, they justified the hike with the sheer technical weight of the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. They promised 4K resolution, 60 frame per second fluidity, ray tracing, and lightning-fast SSDs that eliminated loading screens. They were selling the future. Nintendo, conversely, is selling a past that is chugging along on a mobile processor from 2015. Asking $70 for a game that frequently drops below 30 frames per second and renders at a muddy 720p isn't an inflationary adjustment, it's an insult to the consumer's intelligence. It is the equivalent of a budget airline charging first-class prices while the engines are smoking on the tarmac. But there is a positive side to this narrative that Nintendo's defenders cling to with religious fervor: the polish. In an era of AAA gaming that has become a graveyard of live service disasters, broken launches, and games that require 50GB day-one patches just to function, Nintendo remains a bastion of traditional quality. When you buy a Nintendo game, you are buying a finished product. There are no predatory battle passes, no $20 character skins, and no loot boxes designed to exploit children's gambling impulses. Tears of the Kingdom may have cost $70, but it arrived as a complete, sprawling masterpiece of systemic design, a game so dense and bug-free that it put the $200 million budgets of Western developers to shame. For many, that $10 increase was a purity tax, a small price to pay to escape the psychological warfare of modern monetization. Yet this purity is shadowed by a corporate history of ruthless litigation and anti-consumer behavior.
Nintendo doesn't just want your $70, they want total control over how you perceive and interact with their history. This is the company that sends private investigators to the homes of modders, shuts down fan-run tournaments, and issues thousands of cease and desist letters to YouTubers for the crime of sharing the music they grew up with. When a company that acts like a litigious shark starts demanding next-gen prices for last-gen tech, the relationship moves from symbiotic to parasitic. The $70 price tag became the symbol of a leviathan that knows its audience is trapped by nostalgia and has decided to squeeze every last drop of blood from the stone. The rejection of the $70 standard was also a reaction to the global economic climate. 2023 was a year defined by greedflation, where corporations across every sector used the cover of post-pandemic logistics to pad their profit margins to record highs. For a family in rural America or a student in London, $70 isn't just a number, it's a week of groceries or a significant portion of a utility bill. By breaking the $60 barrier, Nintendo signaled that gaming was no longer a hobby for the masses, but a luxury for the affluent. They effectively cannibalized their own family-friendly brand, alienating the very demographic that built their empire. There is an inherent irony in Nintendo's position as the safe brand. While they market themselves as the guardian of childhood innocence, their digital storefront is a chaotic, uncurated wilderness of shovelware and asset flips that make finding quality titles nearly impossible. By raising the price of their first-party titles, they created a massive price vacuum. Third-party developers quickly followed suit, trying to claim their own $70 slice of the pie, leading to a general inflation across the eShop that has made the Switch the most expensive platform to support in the long run.
The low entry price of the console itself was a bait and switch. The cheap hardware was merely a gateway to the most expensive software ecosystem in the world. Furthermore, we must look at the voucher system, a band-aid solution that exposed the company's desperation to maintain the $70 optics while offering a backdoor to the old pricing. By allowing players to buy 2 games for $100, Nintendo admitted that $70 was a psychological bridge too far for the average consumer. But the catch was classic Nintendo. You had to be a paid subscriber to their online service to access the deal. It was a digital company store tactic, forcing users into a recurring subscription loop just to avoid being overcharged for their games. It was a masterclass in obfuscation, turning a price hike into a membership perk. As we move toward the successor of the Switch in 2026, the $70 Zelda Ghost still haunts every boardroom meeting in Kyoto. The rejection wasn't just about the $10, it was a vote of no confidence in the idea that nostalgia is an infinite resource. Gamers are beginning to realize that the big N isn't their friend, and their childhood memories shouldn't be held for ransom. We are witnessing the slow-motion collision between a company that refuses to grow up and an audience that is tired of being treated like a piggy bank. Nintendo has built a fortress of IP so strong that it can survive almost any PR disaster. But every time they push a cynical pricing strategy, they chip away at the foundation of that fortress. The legacy of the $70 Zelda launch will be remembered as the moment the Nintendo magic met the Nintendo monopoly. It was the moment the company decided that their brand was so powerful they no longer needed to compete on value, only on demand. They bet that people would grumble, complain, and write essays, but they would still buy the game. And they were right.
Tears of the Kingdom sold over 20 million copies, but the cost was the death of the benevolent toy maker persona. The mask is gone, and what's left is a corporate entity that understands your heart and knows exactly how much it's worth in yen. In the end, the rejection of the $70 game is a story of resistance in a world where everything is becoming a subscription or a microtransaction. It was a rare moment where a community stood up and said that even for the things we love, there is a limit. Nintendo may have won the battle for the $70 price point, but they are losing the war for the soul of the medium. As independent developers rise and hardware power becomes commoditized, the Nintendo tax looks less like a mark of prestige and more like a desperate attempt to stay relevant in a world that is outgrowing its childhood heroes.